Hello, everyone. My name is Beak, alongside Waffles for Sid. We are casting tonight's game between Storybook Villains and Spongebob Mac and Cheese. This is actually the first weekend of regular season matches for Season 3.9 of Owlet. And, we heard some of my opinions on these two teams on the Nest. I think Spongebob Mac and Cheese is a wild card, so to speak. A lot of different roles being played across different, between people playing supports and then playing tanks from map to map. Storybook Villains, supposed to be in all three of our power rankings, the number one team. Some of them apparently not even taking this tournament seriously because of that. Should be very interesting. So, Waffles, as we look to go into our first control map, what are your opinions on the meta? How Overwatch is being played right now before we jump into this match between these two teams?
Well, everyone likes to complain about the meta depending on what role you play and who you favor. But Echo's been a big powerhouse lately, so it'll be interesting to see if we, see her played a lot or not. Focus beam alone, once your team focus fires and she gets to follow up on that, it just melts you very quickly. But it'll be interesting to see what they bring to the table on that front.
Yeah, it really is interesting. I mean, we talked about how dominant Echo is right now currently. That's why she was the face of some of these experimental nerfs, with her focusing being decreased, with that ammo being decreased as well. Now, we won't see any of those changes tonight because we're still on the live patch and we can't wait for those changes. Personally, as a tank main, I can't wait for those changes because I like playing the game and not being in spawn. And I'm sure the tanks tonight will definitely be partial to agree. As I think we're about to head into Lijiang Tower. So, I mean, Lijiang Tower lends itself to a lot of different compositions and some even cheese strats, I think, occasionally, depending on what the team has in mind and how creative they can be. What are your preferred compositions for Lijiang Tower, Waffles?
Oh, for Lijiang Tower, I like a quick rollout with Lucio on every control map personally. And I'm a big Zarya player, and I think that she can really push forward a lot. I don't know if that's what we're going to see a bunch of today, but I think for control, the fast rollout is really key in establishing the ground and the space that you and your team want to control for this first fight. Because as a defender, it's much easier to let the team roll into your bullets as you're walking up those hallways. And so I favor a faster rollout comp for control maps. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why we always see a Symmetra to be played at the beginning when the spawn, at least at the top levels at Overwatch League and the Contenders League, trying to get as far. I think we are ready to go here. And we're about to jump into our first map of Lijiang Control. But yeah, that's why you see the sim cut out. It's all about positioning, like you said, whether it's a brawl comp, whether it's that hybrid dive with the ball of some variety with the other elf tank. It's going to lend itself to a lot of different things that I'm curious to see how Storybook Villains really, I think the focus is on them tonight because we talked a lot about Spongebob Mac and Cheese. We saw them in our preseason games. But Storybook Villains did not play any preseason games, and we really were just speculating on them based on their average SR, what SR they scrim at, which is around 4K, and their SR average is around 4K. So I'm curious to see. Sometimes, like I said last night, the SR is sometimes deceiving, at least when it comes to averages. So I'm going to be really curious to see how we go in here. So again, we are moving into Lijiang Tower here as we're jumping into this game. And I'm curious to see which of these players are going to be the standouts between these two teams, because SpongeBob Mac and Cheese played Everfrost really, really close a couple days ago, going all the way to 6 maps. But I think Storybook Villains is an entirely different animal, and we are going to Lijiang Command Center, which always lends itself to a certain unique type of variety of comps, Waffles.
Yeah, and looks like here they're gonna have that. What is this first one called? Is this the control center
This
map
is
here?
Control Center, yes.
Yeah, so we have that, kind of mid-ground area in the white room there, and a lot of teams are gonna usually push out and engage that down those little hallways. So hopefully we see a lot of funneling going on and good first encounters for this first round.
That's true. We see Jack hovering over that bastion. I know he wants to. I know SpongeBob Mac and Cheese, based on their team cards and the information they provided us, they like playing bastion comps. And actually, I'm pretty sure if my brain might be forgetting at this point, but in their first preseason game, they tried to roll out on a bastion type of composition on Lijiang Control Center. So
Really?
that is actually yeah, they tried to take the coast they tried to take the coast side of Lijiang Control, take
Oh.
that view away from, so they all had to hide behind those different cover near that white room. Now
Mhm.
it was didn't really work out. They still ended up losing the point because you could just kind of be surrounded.
Mhm.
But nevertheless, it'd be interesting if they try and do that again. But it seems like they're learning their lesson. They have a very much more traditional composition that they're going to be rolling out with. Both teams look like they're going to have a Ryan Zarya composition of sorts with a Lucio. And I think there are some technical difficulties that we're getting right now about the lobby and the lobby code that we're all sorting out here in the back. So, I mean, apologies. Going to have to wait a couple more minutes before we get into our first regular season game between Storybook Villains and SpongeBob Mac and Cheese.
I am curious to see if SpongeBob Mac and Cheese are going to, step up as a little bit as a team and try to, rise to the occasion against Storybook Villains, who, like you said, are a big focus because of, some of their past rankings and what they currently scrim at. SpongeBob Mac and Cheese in their team card there said, quote, "We might lose every game, but if we win, that's Pog." So, I would love to see them kind of be the underdog in this story and catch Storybook Villains by surprise.
Yeah, I don't
You see
think
it all the time.
I don't think
Champions get lax.
Shakespeare could have put it any better himself about if we win, that'd be Pog. Very eloquently put by SpongeBob Mac and Cheese there. So it will really be interesting to see. They really are punching above their weight here in the first match of Owlet season 3.9. Really excited to get into it here. And we're still on Lijiang Control Center, so everything still does. So
Still hanging out in the pause.
and we are still getting another pause. So while we figure this out, we can actually flip it to a quick break here while we figure it out on the back end. Just be quickly patient here for us as we see you on the other side of this break. And welcome back, everyone. Quick pause there. Like I said, only to be patient for a couple seconds as we are ready to unpause and get into our first map of Lijiang Control Center between Storybook Villains and SpongeBob Mac and Cheese. Waffles, this is going to be a really exciting game once we actually get in the game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it here. You can see that, what is it? Storybook Villains has the Doomfist lined up. And, I'm a fan of the Doomfist. He comes out of nowhere, takes down those people in the back line who are real squishy, and just does devastating damage and gets out quickly. So hopefully SpongeBob Mac and Cheese is ready for that type of aggression in the back line. But who knows?
Yeah, we all love those one-shot heroes that come out of nowhere. It really increases our enjoyment of the game. But nevertheless, this is a really good point for Doomfist in all seriousness. And we see Brutal One swapping to that Symmetra to be able to get the upper edge, just trying to go take this white room, if not a little bit else. It might be a little bit different pathing. But here we go. We are getting started. Both teams are going to use that Symmetra to get that position. And we are going to try and take this fight in this white room. Both teams are going to be trying to aggress onto each other, but now, to back up a little bit, Kirby Bro does get that early pick on that Doomfist. It already is working out in their behalf, but Cobalt getting low. Kirby Bro gets another kill onto the main healer of SpongeBob Mac and Cheese, and now it really is just cleanup for Storybook Villains. Before the point even unlocks, this fight is over, Waffles.
Wow. Yeah, that was a quick sweep done by Storybook Villains there. Really nice work from Kirby, just coming in, wreaking havoc on SpongeBob Mac and Cheese.
Yeah, well, interesting that Cobalt went in a little too heavy because he actually had to die and come back from spawn, but he does have a Shatter ready to go here already. Our Ares goes in with a charge, but in that regard, Cobalt leaves, gets an entire opportunity to shatter everyone and gets a couple kills right there, but Ares shatters everyone in the back as well. And now we have Kirby Bro using that Meteor Strike and gets one with it in Madison, and now that is another fight reset. 20% up already for Storybook Villains.
Yeah, Coalescence online for both of them. Not sure about Ares' far charge earlier, but right now, Coalescence got popped by Echo Force there as they're holding the gate on this choke point for the red team.
And a really big difference here is that Dykopath is a lot less on their ultimate charge than Nikolai is. I think Nikolai has been high charged for a really long time here. Hasn't really died yet, so they're really having trouble pushing through this choke. Big slam on the Mustard Man does get that kill, but they are... Oh, he dies in beat! Alex Yoshi dies trying to use that beat and is a little bit too late. Brutal One gets really greedy with that Death Blossom, and the kills are coming in for Spongebob Mac and Cheese, but they haven't really gotten past this choke at all.
Yeah, you know, they do have a chance here to push in. Looks like Blue is trying to do a soft reset and back off to fight, you know, far back on the point. Grab gets thrown also.
Yeah,
and the tire to follow up.
Big grab and big tire combination by both Storybook Villains. This should be enough to turn the point as it does. Kirby Bro still does a pick on the Ares. Not really much you can do as a Rhine there, but great grab by Nikolai, great tire by Jack, who is on that DPS. A couple different maps before in those previous games he was on support, flex support. And those kills, late kills coming in for SpongeBob Mac and Cheese, so should make Storybook Villains wait a little bit longer to be able to get a full 6 here, but they still have another Meteor Strike as well as a grab, so that should be something they can try and do here.
Grab gets thrown there. Very nice job. Looks like Blue is trying to push in a little bit here. Those turrets slowing them down just a bit, but Red manages to continue holding the point here. SpongeBob Mac and Cheese just preventing Storybook Villains from being able to push onto the point. Looks like they're touching a little bit, but probably going to get chased off quick.
Yeah, it just does look like a lost fight for Storybook Villains, but you never know. They think they can clutch this out. Cobalt has a shatter, so he's going to use it now. Gets two, gets the main tank and Madison as well, but doesn't really have enough backup to help him confirm those kills, and because of that, he dies for that. And Kirby Bro is trying to kill the Lucio, which is a little bit more of an elusive target here, as the less he gives his life for it. So nevertheless, this is still SpongeBob Mac and Cheese's point, and now they're almost tying Storybook Villains on percentage, as Brutal One has swapped over to the McCree here. And it's just the fight has never really ended because the picks just keep going back and forth, because Nikolai is now swapped over to the ball. He was that Zarya before. Cobalt is now alone on the point as Mustard Man uses his giant wall and barrier, and as well as Yaxi's using that beat. So it's been kind of a chaotic fight here so far.
Yeah, if you're not running out of breath yet, Beak, I'm sure you are soon. Earthshatter came through with the sound barrier and High Noon to counter. High Noon does manage to find Nikolai, and the tire is looking for a victim, finding Dykopath. Ooh, Storybook Villains Shatter does get blocked. Nice job there by Ares, and overtime is active, but currently Storybook Villains are on the point trying to maintain their presence here. SpongeBob Mac and Cheese trying to clear out the rest of Storybook Villains. There's the mines to continue zoning them out of the point here. The Wisp just jumping around, avoiding those mines, and the Sim turrets can't quite stay out in the clear. Doomfist doing his best to keep on the point, but he's going to get mowed down quickly, and right now Storybook Villains are just trickling in, trying to keep overtime up, and that is going to be a first point going to SpongeBob Mac and Cheese.
This is a rather surprising development, obviously, when we talked about how formidable Storybook Villains is, but I actually think they took their opponent a little bit for granted, because none of the really engagements were organized in any way, shape, or form. It seemed like they had a lot of different ult combinations that they could have used, but they were either mistimed or mis-executed. We'll never know what's going on in their comms. But interesting, we have SpongeBob Mac and Cheese already punching above their weight, up 1-0 on this control point.
Totally. And I have to say, I really want to call out Nikolai's Zarya bubble. At one point, they were in the choke, and when that sim wall was popped, there was only a very narrow window for the Earth Shatter to land, and Nikolai popped that bubble perfectly to just block the whole thing for his team and allow them to push forward, cap the point, and eventually win it.
Yes, absolutely. Bubbles are the most important thing. As we see now, we're on another version of Lijiang Tower here, and a little bit two different comps here. We have a lot more divey compositions. Cobalt gets an early kill on the Madison, but gives his life for it as Nikolai takes him out, spending a little bit too long in their backline. Psychopath gets taken out of her mech, and now she's just trying to get herself back in the mech, but it will not be for the case. And Spongebob Mac and Cheese winning another fight, it seems like, to be able to get the early point control for Lijiang Gardens.
Yeah, and it looks like, you know, that Widowmaker from Brutal needs to put a little bit more pressure on those flying characters. They are being pocketed by Alex Yoshi, which much harder to mow down after that, but the air pressure is very good coming from Spongebob Mac and Cheese.
Yeah, Madison gives up his life again. So he's the sacrificial lamb as you are the Genji. And then we had 2 early kills here for Storybook Villains. And the point actually turns for SPV. So now anything else is just gravy for them in terms of the fight that that SpongeBob wants to take. But it seems like they do want to reset here. So we actually saw an important swap that the Wisp has moved over to the Brigitte. So obviously a little more counter dive, trying to negate Ares as well as any of the impact that Nikolai might have. The Jack is duplicate, as well as that Valkyrie accompanied by Alex. So we do see here Jack copies the Winston, but Kirby Bro more importantly has that Nano Blade, and he gets 2 with that kill. So they are already up 2, but then Echo Force goes down to the Primal Rage by Jack's duplicate, being able to use that at will. Finally expends that. As we see in the back though, there's multiple fights happening right now. Madison is using the Transcendence way back in their spawn choke, and all the while this is a point that's ticking up for Storybook Villains.
Yeah, you know, I would say that SpongeBob Mac and Cheese really needs to regroup and get a solid push in so the point just isn't ticking constantly, slowly in favor of SPV.
And it seems like they're almost making the same mistake the Storybook Villains was doing on Control Center, where they're trying to win fights that were really losable. But now we see a little bit different of a rotation by SpongeBob Mac and Cheese as we see the mines come in by Ares, and then we get an attempt by Mr. Musterman to use his barrage, but as a classic fare is, never really lasts that long. Kirby Bro has another blade. It gets 1, gets 2 with that blade again. So really getting consistent value out of that nano blade time and time again. Not even nanoed that time. That was a naked blade. And again, now this is 85% of the way there on this control point. And we see Ares swap to Ryan. I don't really know if they'll be able to contest this as fast. Obviously, Jack might be able to touch, but this is dire straits for SpongeBob Mac and Cheese here.
Totally. We're entering last fight territory here, and Brutal has switched over to the Tracer, so it'll be interesting to see what they bring to the table. Huge pin coming out from Ares to open up this last fight for them, and just last chance for them to potentially cap it in their favor and take this first map.
Yeah, this is kind of an interesting thing. I mean, if Ares was going to get a kill on Reinhardt, it would be through that kind of cheesy pin that we get, but nevertheless, the fight is still taking place on this point. It seems like SpongeBob Mac and Cheese might actually be able to turn this around with some couple kills by Mr. Musterman and Nikolai. And now we have a little bit of a reset that Storybook Villains has to do. Ares gets a reset, I think, on himself. I don't know if that was on purpose or not, but now we have a nano coming out by Echo Force. He's going to be looking to use that. Kirby Bro doesn't have his blade up yet, so maybe this will get used on the Cobalt to really get a lot of cleave damage here, as well as then can persist into his Primal Rage to really just push them back as much as possible. But Ares is aggressing in already. Big Pulse Bomb used, doesn't get any kills with it, does get Wisp low. And now we have Cobalt going in. Primal's really early, doesn't even get low, but he has a feeling that he causes a lot of damage. Ares gets a boop kill off of Psychopath, and we get a lot of kills from Mr. Musterman. Gets 2 there with the barrage. Hero has that blade already, gets another kill on the Madison as he has swapped over to the Brig. And we get Cobalt hiding precariously on this point, but it doesn't really matter because it's still, point is ticking up for SpongeBob Mac and Cheese. It was not enough for Storybook Villains, and they have to find themselves another answer to recap this point because they lost that fight.
Yeah, you know, this is feeling a bit like deja vu of the first round once again. You know, SpongeBob Mac and Cheese coming back and winning this last fight and continuing to play really good defense once they've established themselves on the point. There's the rally coming through, so it should be tough for the teams here when they engage.
Interesting. Wow, massive boop by Psychopath. She identified that Ares had used his grapple, used his pile drive, and boops him off the map really early. And that might be the fight right there and then. And now it's just kind of a trickling kind of pattern here by SpongeBob Mac and Cheese, because now we are already in overtime, and they are just trying to touch the point of which Jack is going to need to get massive value out of this Pulse Bomb to even try and turn this fight whatsoever. Bomb comes in and gets one kill, gets Nikolai while he is in mech, and that's just too little too late, as he's also getting killed by that High Noon. And it just seems like this is inevitable, as we will get a tie game here on Lijiang Tower. Brutal One getting the Q cleanup kills on McCree. And it was pretty scary there for Storybook Villains for a bit, because got up to 100 to 95%. Nevertheless, Storybook Villains does even up Lijiang Tower.
Yeah, well, you know, Brutal One was swapping between a few different characters, so I wonder if they had trouble figuring out, you know, what was actually working synergy-wise with them and against the other team best. He started on the Widow, flipped to the McCree, went to Tracer, and then back to the McCree again. So I'm wondering what he's gonna choose coming into this next fight, or this next match.
And this is the point of Lijiang that I am always most curious about, because this is where you can get some real wonky comps, especially a Symmetra TPing the point here, but we don't see that. We see two different type of compositions. Storybook Villains going with a much more divey role with Cobalt on the ball, where we have a lot more sustain, let's just say, from SpongeBob Mac and Cheese playing a Rhine Hog, as well as that Sim and the Reaper. And before we get to see how these two comps actually fight each other, we are going to have to go into a pause. So I guess one of the players either asked for a pause, or there might be some technical difficulties. But these are really two interesting compositions. I wasn't expecting any of this. So Waffles, what do you make of these two comps, and how do you think this will play out as we're about to jump into the point unlocking?
You know, I don't know if Storybook Villains are going to be ready for the Reaper to come in and be able to put that much damage down, and in such a tight quarter of the point. Once you're on there, you basically have to always run straight into his two shotguns. So hopefully they're able to mitigate some of that, or at least use the mobility that they have to get out of the way. But on the flip side, you know, Echo Force is going to be on that Zen. And if Storybook Villains can play more like we see them play in the last final bits of the round, or at the very beginning, not the middle part, I think that they could really focus on the targets and Elton just as quickly as an Echo would.
So very interesting that as we go back into this game, SpongeBob Mac and Cheese has already gotten point control, or at least point presence, before the point really unlocks. But so now it's on Storybook Villains to try and take that away from Kirby. Gets a massive cleave dive on there, but Jack is able to take him out. But the damage seems to have been done as Brutal One gets a kill on the Zen. Poor Madison. Echo Force gets his lick in on the enemy Moira. And it seems that Storybook Villains has been able to push SpongeBob Mac and Cheese off the point, so to speak, and the hook misses by Nikolai, and now the point has actually gone over to Storybook Villains very early on here. So even with that very heavy sustained competition with that hog, it seems that they have been able to get this point in their favor.
Yeah, and you know, I'm actually really surprised that Red wasn't able to have a little bit more longevity on there. Oh, they have got to watch out for Cobalt's boost. That's like the third or fourth one he's had on this map alone.
That is, this is the one thing you don't do, guys. When you are pathing onto this point, guys, and you know that there is a ball on the other team and you are not mobile heroes, do not go that way. That is not helpful for you, so to speak. But nevertheless, Cobalt for sure has those mines ready to go, and he can probably use them at ease here as he's putting them in that choke to make things as hard as possible. Madison just walks into that. I think he didn't realize that they were activating in that quickly of time, and that's going to be a quick reset for Storybook Villains with winning that fight already.
Yeah, great mine placement there, splitting up the team and just forcing them to be a little bit more scattered, plenty to mow down the squishies. And, well, burning the clock is excellent, especially in control when you have possession.
Cobalt essentially wins the fight for them before on point by getting those massive boops. But because of that, he uses the mines to win the next fight too. So as we see, Kirby gets another massive preset dive there. Brutal One using his High Noon from a distance. That way no one can really get to him, but they use that wall in conjunction to try and path the point. It doesn't really seem like it's working too much. Aries so low, Brutal One is able to finish him off. And again, doesn't really seem like they're able to, or SpongeBob Mac and Cheese is really able to path themselves successfully to the point. And we're already at 80% for the final point of Lijiang Tower.
Wow, and you know, this time SpongeBob Mac and Cheese hasn't even gotten a chance to actually touch the point after the first time.
This is the problem with the point that they have is Jack tries to go for that Death Blossom, gets deleted immediately. The Wisp is able to ignite that rally on point, making her as hard as possible to kill. Even with all those different cooldowns, finally goes down to the rest of Spongebob Mac and Cheese. But now Cobalt has entered the battle trying to take out Madison. Is super low, finally does get that kill. And now the Transcendence comes Echo Force to try and sustain everyone as Ares goes down. Brutal One has another High Noon, but doesn't get DM'd in time by Dychopath as he gets deleted by Jack in the face. Nikolai gets a missiles kill on the Echo Force in turn, and now this is actually turning around in the favor of SpongeBob Mac and Cheese. Even though with those mines by Cobalt on the point, doesn't seem like it's to be enough as they finally turn the tide. But now Waffles, SpongeBob Mac and Cheese didn't have to play this perfectly. Oh my God, Nikolai, what was that? Accidentally runs into a mine to delete him and delete the rest of his health on that mech. But yeah, they're gonna play this perfectly, and that's not the way to start it.
Yeah, and I mean, SpongeBob Mac and Cheese seems to be pulling it together here, right? As SBV gets 99% every time, and they get the first 2 opening kills already, which could be huge. There's still a huge environmental factor that they need to be aware of, but those mines are going to zone them and shut down that push.
Yeah, very interesting that Jack gets an early pick with that Tracer Pulse Bomb to really force the fight into the favor of SpongeBob Mac and Cheese anyway. And Ares uses those mines to completely deter them, and they have to reset here. But Kirby Bro has that Meteor Strike ready to go, as well as that Diva Bomb. So SpongeBob Mac and Cheese has to be really careful about where they position here. Nikolai has to get out of mech and use that bomb just to get back. Pulse Bomb gets eaten by Dychopath. Excellent job, as well as Kirby Bro getting a kill on the Jack and then getting out via that Meteor Strike, but isn't able to actually get out. Brutal One using another High Noon. Echo Force getting a High Noon, or getting a Dink headshot. Big bomb going in by Dychopath, doesn't actually get the kill. And this seems like it is going to be finally Storybook Villains breaking through that point and getting the last fight that they need to turn this point around and get Lijiang control completely in their favor.
Yeah, I mean, we saw some really good plays coming out through, and they're still trying to trickle on. SpongeBob Mac and Cheese not giving up until the end. Valiant effort here by both the Hammond and the Tracer, but they're just going to be overwhelmed with, a few victory ults thrown in at the end by Storybook Villains.
Yeah.
Great play all around by Storybook Villains. We did expect some pretty high quality gameplay, and I think that last round was the best. Oh, and Cobalt. Is he going to boop one person, 2 people?
Yeah, we see the boop onto the Reaper as well. Gets the Moira, even with the Fade isn't going to be enough, and we know that Zen can float, but he can't fly. So that's going to be death for him, and Cobalt finding the perfect combination, perfect opportunity to be able to boop them off that map. But I mean, SBV was looking slightly better as we went along in that map on a point-to-point basis. Mm-hmm. And I really think it does boil down to the composition that SpongeBob Mac and Cheese tried to run with in the beginning, right? On that third point of Night Market. So it was a high risk, high reward type of composition. If you can play that on point and be able to sustain that point presence, that's going to make life really tough for SBV in that ball and Diva comp. But they weren't able to do that, and thus it was so hard to even get back to point. SBV played their cards perfectly.
Yeah, well, and SpongeBob Mac and Cheese, when they had possession of the point, they pushed really far forward aggressively, which I do like when you need to be in control of the point the whole time. But they didn't all push forward as a team. They were split off a little bit and kind of spread about. So when Cobalt came through his Hammond and started putting pressure on the point, there was no one actually there to peel for each other. And then when everyone peeled, well, it's a long run back to the point when you're across the map, trying to be aggressive on the other front. So, I don't know if maybe being so spread out was the right play by SpongeBob Mac and Cheese on that front. Maybe a little more aggressive towards the closer hallway of the alleyway where you push. But, I'm still an underdog rooter. I want to see SpongeBob Mac and Cheese kind of shake things up. Villains, and an upset's always fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone roots for upsets, and every Storybook and Disney movie out there. I think SpongeBob Mac and Cheese, all things considered, played that map pretty close actually. I know SpongeBob was fighting for percentage in a couple of those different points, up to even 99%, coming down to the last final fight. But we don't know if that's, again, Storybook villains, just if that is that just a thing of control, right? Because control can always be a pretty unpredictable game mode, so to speak. Or Storybook villains playing with their food right now. We don't really know.
Right.
Only one more map will determine that as we go. I think we're about to jump into Rialto, which is a very divisive map. Waffles, what is your opinion on Rialto? Because when you ask people around the Overwatch community about Rialto, people either love it or they hate it and want to delete it from the game.
Yeah. I have to say originally I wasn't a huge fan of it. But nowadays I do like it a lot. I enjoy the different high ground areas that you can get to, and there's a lot of different ways to get to it. So it's always a constant challenge to, watch your sight lines. And, sometimes when I'm playing tank, those corners are so great to play around. There's a lot of really solid corners that give you some cover and allow you to, charge in when necessary.
It is a very interesting map. I think I miss it. I miss it from the GOAT's perspective. I think back to the Shock and Titans playing this some of the most legendary maps ever on Rialto and GOATs, and making some ridiculous attack times on each other.
Yes.
But also I think it lended itself to that double shield composition that we saw for the past year, with such long sight lines on point A and point B. Is going to be really interesting. I don't think we'll see any double shield in this particular game. However, we never know. I mean, this is exactly the kind of thing that we're talking about. Mid-Masters teams, High Masters teams, people play what they want to play, and we'll see what happens here on Rialto as we jump into this. So we do have Spongebob Mac and Cheese on the attack, Storybook villains on the defense, as we're about to see what kind of compositions they're about to roll out with. And Brutal One is flirting with a Bastion. They are on the defense, so they won't be able to switch this if they go in too far with it. And it seems like they are committing to a Bastion Doomfist composition with that Baptiste. So we talked a little bit on the Nest about how this is a team that might not be taking this tournament seriously, and this might be the manifestation of that, seeing how much they can get away with this composition, as they're going to try and take SpongeBob Mac and Cheese by surprise right near their spawn.
Yeah, and I don't know if SpongeBob Mac and Cheese will be ready for their own preferred comp that they do enjoy. In their player notes, they do like a Bastion comp, like we said. So can they handle the Bastion comp and gets them?
Well, Nikolai already finds a kill on Kirby Bro, so he doesn't really get the value, but look how split they are. Brutal One and Bap is already on a much different angle, and Cobalt just gets left out to dry by the hook with Nikolai, and Jack has swapped over to that Bastion as well, so they see that Brutal One went to Bastion, and they say, you know what, well, you could do it, I could do it just as well, and it seems like they are indeed doing that, because SpongeBob Mac and Cheese did not get phased at all by Storybook Villain's attempt to play that Bastion strat, which isn't exactly was a pretty interesting one, so to speak, but nevertheless, they are sent back to spawn, and they have to reset. Brutal One has swapped over to that Widow.
Yeah, absolutely. And, SpongeBob Mac and Cheese still pushing the point forward really solidly here, but Cobalt is gonna be, I'm sorry. Ares. Oh, Ares gets taken down. He was trying to displace the back, but no success there.
Yeah, we see Brutal One swapping to that Widow, already getting 2 picks out of that. Very valuable indeed. Dichopath getting hooked and was getting low, but is able to survive. Musterman getting the better out of Echo Force in the back. We saw the Brutal One trying to take a 1v1 against Jack on the high ground as Bastion. Don't really see that too often. But Kirby Bro seems to be in a really precarious position in that back corner. He had nowhere to go. And this is looking pretty good for SpongeBob Mac and Cheese, as Nikolai gets another kill, uses that whole hog on a poor Cobalt, and is only thing able to do is try and touch the point, but that's not happening when you have a Bastion and a whole hog looking at you down the barrel. And now first point has been capped by SpongeBob Mac and Cheese with over 4 minutes and 45 seconds to go to complete the Streets phase.
Yeah, and SpongeBob Mac and Cheese has been doing a really good job. Alex Yoshi just keeping her DPS alive there and pocketing the Bastion as needed. And, well, usually he gets mowed down pretty quick, so I have to say I'm impressed with the longevity he's had so far.
Yeah, this is a really difficult comp, obviously, for Storybook Villains to try and run. Oh, and gets canceled out of the Shatter, Cobalt does. This is just the tough life of a Rhine main, but he's also trying to play Rhine into a Hog and Ball and Bastion, so I can't say that you're going to find much success there, and because of that, he gets taken out, even with that successful charge onto Jack, just not enough damage as Spongebob Mac and Cheese continues to move this cart, and they're pushing way up into the spawn of Storybook Villains in their point C. So they're getting pretty comfortable with this positioning they have. Ares is chilling out with Jack on this left-hand staircase.
Yeah, and here's the dragons tearing through here, trying to clear a little space on the payload itself. Barrage coming through. Oh, does get shut down quickly by Brutal. Not too surprising there as she's a stationary target, but Beak at 5:05 pressing, that is a huge time bank for Spongebob Mac and Cheese.
Yeah, Jack getting 3 kills on that high ground right before that point is capped, is just kind of doing whatever he wants right now on Bastion of all characters, which you don't really see too often, especially at this high elo. I think Storybook Villains probably should have read the team card of SpongeBob Mac and Cheese, how they indicate that they love to play Bastion, so they try to play with the devil there, and he does get hooked, but he still is not dying. So Jack has been able to protect the president, so to speak, so far, and we're already going into this last point of point C with over 4 minutes to go, and Alex Yoshi tries to go for that res, isn't exactly successful when Brutal One is looking at you in the face with that McCree piece, whatever his gun name is. He's sending you back to Peacekeeper. Thank you. Sending you back to spawn, doesn't matter. So finally, Storybook Villains actually gets to stop the bleeding, and now SpongeBob Mac and Cheese has to reset and try and retake this cart with the same composition with that Bastion, Ball, and Hog.
Totally, and Jack just used his Bastion ultimate, so, looks like they're only going to be able to push in with Whole Hog and Barrage, which are some good ultimates. I guess mine's feels up close. It's a big zoning ultimate. We could see something big come out from Ares as well, but, Jack just takes down Kirby again. Wow.
So just Jack on all these different weird positions that you have a lot of other threats on SpongeBob Mac and Cheese right now, like that hook from Nikolai, like the frag ability from Madison, and like the Farah poke damage. Just too many threats from too many places, and because of that, Storybook Villains is having such a tough time to even touch the point, and because of that, SpongeBob completes the map with 3 minutes and 19 seconds to spare. So that is actually very surprising, and I think SpongeBob is surprised themselves that worked that well, Waffles.
I bet you Storybook Villains weren't ready to go against a team who knew how to run that comp so comfortably. And, right at the end there, I want to call out that Alex Yoshi got to do some battle mercy and did up getting the kill at the end. So always nice to see that, you're doing comfortable enough. You can just whip out the Glock, get the work done.
Yeah, exactly. When you feel like your team can't do it, you do it yourself, especially when you're playing Mercy and you just get to watch them feed over and over and over again. However, that wasn't exactly the case because they were doing the feasting on Storybook Villains. So now the tides have turned. We get to see what Storybook Villains has on their side for their attack. Now that they've gotten completely assaulted by Jack on that Bastion, I'm still kind of in shock by that, and I imagine they are too. And they're going with a much more meta composition. They, I think, have woken up and realized that if they want to win this map, they're going to have to put a pretty blazing time here. But what they don't suspect is Jack on the Samba ready to ruin some of their day.
Oh yeah, that'll be quite the sleeper cell waiting in their backline when they spawn, or once they finally roll out the door. I agree with you on the fact the Storybook Villains was not ready for SpongeBob Mac and Cheese to bring such a good A game.
Yeah, absolutely. They are elevating it for this first game of the Owlet tournament, and Kirby Pro getting a good idea of what the composition looks like. Already taking out Nikolai, who was kind of caught out there on his own. And if you get caught out with the Echo damage boosted focusing beam, you're going to die. And so does Ares, right? So again, just showing how fast Echo can burn someone with that Discord Orb, with that damage boost. And just like that, getting 3 kills on the side of 4 kills for Storybook Villains. And before this card even hits any type of choke, Storybook Villains has cleaned up SpongeBob Mac and Cheese already.
Yeah, and it didn't really seem like SpongeBob Mac and Cheese had much of an engagement there. They all seemed to be a little bit spread out and just got got their edges picked off and pushed through on that front.
And just to talk on top of that, Kirby Bro already has that duplicate ready to go. Brutal One dies almost with that pulse bomb to Mustard Man with a melee kill, which is interesting. Aries just trying to take a fight by himself near the car, isn't going to do it. And because of that, it's, again, pretty split fight by everyone. Kirby Bro gets another kill confirmed on Alex Uzi using that focusing beam, which is such a devastating ability. And all the while, Gar has been slowly inching forward as each member of Spongebob Mac and Cheese has tried to touch the cart in one way or the other, but it just hasn't been enough to actually be any type of a fight win. Aries going to try and touch this cart again, and there's really not much he can do. He's only type of existing on this cart, not actually trying to put any pressure on Storybook villains, but it doesn't seem like really anyone is notified, as Jack gets a 4-man EMP on the Storybook villains, but only one kill seems to have really come out of that, and that's just Dykebath getting out of Connect. So not a lot of value out of that, and as Echo Force actually uses that Transcendence, giant pulse bomb by Brutal One on Madison. So now the kills are coming in by Storybook villains. That EMP needed to get a lot more value than it did, Waffles, and because of that, first point is now being taken by Storybook villains.
Yeah, absolutely. EMP can easily be a one ultimate fight winning type of move, and well, actually Jack has swapped off that onto the McCree, so I'm wondering if they're trying to put more pressure onto Kirby, who has just been melting people left and right with that pocket.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the fact that he had got, I think, 3 or 4 final blows in the first 5 seconds of the game is something that you need to wake up and be like, oh yeah, we need to counter this Echo absolutely stat. And all the while, but Cobalt as well has been a big threat in the back line of Spongebob Mac and Cheese, and this fight is being taken out off the cart, which is exactly the type of progress that Storybook villains wants. Brutal One gets another pick onto Madison. That Madison has begun victimized by Brutal One constantly, time and time again tonight, whether playing the Zen or playing that Brig and getting stuck with that pulse bomb multiple times. And that fight is another reset for Storybook villains.
Yeah, and it's got to be tough on Madison as the Brig to keep getting bullied by this Tracer when, you have your bash and maybe don't quite have the follow-up that you need from your team to save yourself repeatedly.
Yeah, it's pretty devastating, especially when you're trying to exist, and the better value you get as Brig is just staying alive and using that proc. And nonetheless, a couple different kills going on in that past fight. Musterman goes down with that Farah barrage, and Alex Yoshi tries to actually res and then dies with the res. Kirby finding prey her again. So finally stopping the bleeding here is Spongebob Mac and Cheese. So they still have a great time coming into this, and Kirby Bro has another duplicate ready to go.
Yeah, well, Kirby Bro's been on fire, so it'll be interesting to see who they choose to dupe and when and where they are going to be most effective. Personally, I think I would really love to see maybe the dupe onto Aries, get that minefield of their own, but we'll see what they choose.
Kirby decides to play a little bit of getting the Brig jail, and then gets immediately released from Brig jail because he gets deleted by that Farah barrage, just not suspecting that at all as the bomb comes in, gets nothing with it, but Echo Force, it does force out that trans. Nevertheless, it's a little bit late because a lot of the kills have come in for the side of Super Villains. Nikolai is still just trying to contest this point, but it doesn't really matter much because now this is going to be all Storybook villains fight. But however, Aries does come back with that minefield. Cobalt counters with his own minefield, but anytime you see that, it's kind of a desperation move. Mr. Musterman getting low, trying to get out. Brutal One using that high noon, gets Mr. Musterman as he uses that jetpack to jump up and try and get out of the way. Not enough. And this is really just trying to contest this for time because Storybook Villains seems to have this in the bag. But they're doing, SpongeBob is doing a good job of deleting this, as they're not removing Nikolai from the fight. Even it's kind of hard for a Diva and a Mech to hide only for so long. As we see, they finally do rid him of the point, but now Jack is the one contesting. Bomb comes out by Dykebath trying to get kills, doesn't really get anyone. Madison solo again on that Brig, but it's still living, trying to contest that. Cobalt finally gets the kill. But again, this fight is not ending. This is actually turning the tide of SpongeBob Mac and Cheese. So because Storybook Villains refuse to actually kill these guys in any type of expedient matter, this is actually gone in favor of SpongeBob.
Wow, yeah, what a fantastic turnaround for this fight here with the dupe from Kirby, the only remaining player for Storybook Villains here. I'm just so surprised that SpongeBob Mac and Cheese was able to hold this point. Actually, I take it back. They're great at 99% cap. So this is actually their normal moment of shining.
They do seem to be very clutch when it matters. But now this is 30 seconds left for Storybook Villains. But Brutal One does get a pretty important kill onto the enemy Mercy. But now now their own Mercy dies to Jack's Pulse Bomb. Great. Again, very clutch kill by Jack there in the back. Mr. Mushroom gets a kill on the tank. Jack gets another kill in the back line, gets both healers. And now, this is desperation mode for Brutal One, as he's really the only one remaining other than Daiko on the point. And now that they're out of mech, Brutal One can only hope to try and touch us at last second. I don't even know if they see him behind that point, but it's only a matter of time till they go in and take him out. The Wisp is able to actually get the res off of on Daiko Path and gets back into meth. But it might not matter. I mean, there's the Valkyrie coming out by Alex Yoshi, just trying to sustain and as well add that damage boost. As we see Kirby Bro go back onto Echo, trying to recreate the success he had in the beginning of this map, but it's not enough. It's not enough, and because of that, SpongeBob Mac and Cheese actually evens this match.
Wow. You know, that last fight, both Mercies getting picked off really early does even out the teams back and forth, but the spawn advantage in favor of SpongeBob Mac and Cheese definitely came into play as they were back up full force, and well, Jack set up as that bastion that they're so comfortable on and continue to mow down Storybook Villains as they trickled in desperately trying to touch the point at the end.
Yeah. Yep, and it seems like that we, the Storybook Villains came into that map thinking, let's try and meme on them a little bit, when now they are the ones that got memed. So it's that same, it's that meme you see all the time where it's like, hey, it's call an ambulance, but for you, not for me. That's what SpongeBob Mac and Cheese was saying at that point, because they brought out the Bastion. They brought out a really important time. That really put a lot of pressure on Storybook Villains. And I think Storybook Villains is honestly in their comms right now telling themselves, we threw that, guys. We absolutely threw that. Because they had a pretty good time going into what would have been point C, but they just didn't really have any sense of urgency trying to clean up the kills on the last remaining fight. And that just enabled SpongeBob Mac and Cheese to get back into that fight, actually end up winning. And they wasted all their time doing that. And by that time, there was less than a minute left.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you there. They were not mowing down the people who were just left straggling on the cart. Seemed like everybody was shooting their own person on that front. And SpongeBob Mac and Cheese knew to capitalize on that. I was really impressed that, you know, their judgment was to just keep pushing, keep holding. And yeah, you know, I would make the same call of we should keep stalling the point as long as we can, eat up their time bank. And really nice job by them eventually recognizing, oh, hold on a sec. This fight is turning in our favor, and we can actually shut them down now. We need to take a different approach, and you know, switching from the stall mentality to the we're winning this fight mentality is something that is important when you want to win these Overwatch games.
Definitely is. I mean, the fact that it took them so long to kill Nikolai on Diva, and it's not like he was hiding. You can't hide as a Diva behind the point, or at least in front of the point, for very long. You shouldn't be, at least. But nevertheless, they think they were focused on someone behind them, or the in-game leadership was not there on the target calls. For that reason, they are handed a loss, and now this is a tie game between Storybook Villains and SpongeBob Mac and Cheese. And all three people on the nest this week called for this to be a full 3-0. So already our Preds are shattered for this game, because now it's a 1-1 game, and it's anyone's game as far as we've seen, because SpongeBob Mac and Cheese is keeping up with Storybook Villains so far.
Yeah, and you know, I wonder if Storybook Villains just did not warm up in time or bring their A game here in the initial part. It would be great to see them put up a little bit more of a fight against Mac and Cheese. They were big talkers. And in there, you guys said that they weren't even taking this tournament seriously, which is surprising, because typically you take it at least serious enough to win. So I would love to see them come through and really show some like high level Overwatch that they are known for, and I mean, essentially just shine if possible.
Definitely should, if they weren't taking it seriously before, I think that was their wake up call to start taking it seriously, right? They can't meme their way, at least through this match, maybe through other ones they might come across in a 3.9 season. Nevertheless, this will be a tie game now going in what I think we have here in the lobby. So Hollywood's a very interesting map. Obviously, you can play a variety of different compositions. I think Streets phase is always the most important aspect of how you want to approach Hollywood. What kind of compositions do you expect here, Waffles, going into Hollywood here?
Do I expect? I think Cobalt on that Hammond has been putting in a lot of strong work. I don't know if he'll be as eager to play it here on this first point. But I would like to see him at least play it on the Streets phase for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing about Streets phase that really sticks out to me is that long sight lines and the high ground control that you need to take, right? I mean, the fact that you can give or take the high ground for point A, and there's not a ton of high ground to really work with on point C once you get past that main hallway, and it's not really used that much anyway. But the fact that on point B in that Streets phase, you have the elevators to be able to get up to that high ground, and it's going to be a sniper's paradise. But then at the same time, I mean, Echo's been such a strong force. We might see even more of that Echo Mercy dive. I mean, Kirby, even with that loss on Rialto, was a force to be reckoned with on that Echo. So I have to imagine that even with that loss on that map, they're going to go back to that. It's going to work, or at least they believe that it could work.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if SpongeBob Mac and Cheese is going to, go back to their Bastion strat here. It was very successful for them and did a lot of. I mean, you saw how quickly it mowed through the rest of the Storybook villains once they were set up, and Jack did a good job keeping his location mobile in a sense, setting up his turret for him in different areas, and of course, just those hard pockets coming in, keeping him alive from both Mercy and Zen. Not just one healer, both healers, Baby and Bastion. Pretty normal though when you're Bastion. Of course, healers have to baby you because you don't move very much. But I think I would love to see SpongeBob Mac and Cheese actually get a first point hold and just surprise Storybook villains out of the gate with basically a gnarly fortress.
That might happen, but if it will happen, it will happen in the next round, as we do see SpongeBob Mac and Cheese is going to be on the attack first, because I think they get to choose there. Once Storybook Villains gets to choose the map, and they chose Hollywood. So, nevertheless, we might see a full hold on the side of Storybook Villains here, and maybe they do go back to the Bastion strat. Maybe they want to try and force that issue here again. Nevertheless, we will be going to a pause again. I think someone has to check something on their side. Nevertheless, we will have to wait a couple seconds before we start Hollywood. But I think internally, Storybook Villains has to be telling themselves they definitely could have full held that if they played the right comp to begin with, right? Because they started out with not just that Bastion, but it was also how that started too, right? You saw the Bastion, you saw the Baptiste sitting on that high ground on the left side when you're coming out of the attacker's spawn, but then the entire rest of the team was playing it like it was a goats comp, trying to ambush everyone out of the attacking spawn. And it just kind of all crumbled apart because then they swapped the Bastion and there's no shield to protect the Bastion on the other side. So I think if SPV on their end, they have to be saying to themselves, hey, if we played the comp that we started out with on our attack, then we would have absolutely full held, SpongeBob Mac and Cheese. That Bastion would have gotten no value. All of our ultimates. I mean, they tried to play Rhine. I tried to play Rhine into that composition, which again is just going to be a rough time no matter what.
Your shield's gone quick.
So I have to imagine that they're kicking themselves right now, and they're either tilted beyond all hell right now, or they're more motivated than ever to get back into this next map and prove that was just a fluke.
Totally. I mean, it'll be all about how they harness that fire within, so to say, ignite the gaming passion.
Yeah.
But if you're gonna do a cheese strat, so to say, you better practice it because it's not as easy as you might think. And against a team that has grinded a little bit and worked on it, their coordination around it will be a lot better. So I think Storybook Villains are done with that type of shenanigans.
I couldn't agree more, and the reason why is because we're seeing the composition that they're walking out with to try and get this hold on point A of Hollywood, and fairly honest, I say, in traditional composition. with a soldier and a Genji. You don't really see those two characters anymore. They are not DLC guys. They are played. They're actually relatively original characters in this game. But I like this comp a lot because it does offer you a lot of win conditions. The Echo Force with that nano boost has a lot of different options to be able to use, right? You can nano for attack visor, you can nano that Genji blade, you can nano Cobalt to get that cleave. So there's a lot of different options they can run with here. Whereas Spongebob Mac and Cheese has a couple different options they can roll with, and Mr. Mustardman is back on that fair choice, which he actually got a lot of value on Rialto. So he's back to try and if lightning can strike twice here.
Totally. And, well, right now, Brutal One is on the Soldier, so we'll see how much of a counter that becomes for him. But pockets are coming through from Alex Yoshi consistently onto Mr. Mustardman.
And we do see some of the kills coming in. Cobalt dies very early. This is a very rough comp for Winston to dive. You have the current Zen Discord of that 30%. You have that damage boost. You have a Torb, and you have the splash damage in the sky from that Pharah that's going to be able to melt you if you're not careful. And as he dives in, he's trying to target the Zen, but he gets bubbled. He's just not getting the effectiveness he wants with that dive, and he's kind of solo diving it there, and because of that, you're going to get sent back to spawn. Spongebob Mac and Cheese, due to this, is slowly but surely almost getting this. They almost have the full percentage here. They have already really, 80% here on this point. Kirby Bro does get a kill. He is 75% away to that blade, so he's going to have to do a lot of work before he gets that blade for that nano. But Echo Force is still alive to be able to do this, so they are just sustaining just long enough, and here we go. He gets nano before that happens, and because of that, Mr. Mustardman throws out that barrage, gets the Wisp, which is successful, but gets slept in response. And Kirby Bro still trying to whack things. He's trying to slice the turret open with that Genji blade. Can't exactly say that's very effective use of it. Nevertheless, it does find the fight win for Storybook villains. So despite all of that zaniness that we just saw, they are able to hold with only giving up 85% at this point.
Yeah, and Dichopath there, really quite the unsung hero. Very high charge for almost the entire fight. And I don't actually, they didn't die once. They knew to back out, keep a little bit of presence on the point, and they were able to soft regroup with such a strong charge, being so deadly.
And we see an early kill from the turret of Jack, getting a kill already. Nikolai getting that grab in. And then the counter grab by Dichopath not getting as much value because Madison is able to use that Transcendence. And because of that, and Kirby Rose trying to get out with that dash, but it might as well just die on point, my friend, because it is first point taken for Spongebob Mac and Cheese with over 3 minutes and 55 seconds to go to complete the map.
Yeah, well, what is it? Madison's trance in response to the grab definitely shut down Dichopath's counter grab. So hopefully they can think of a way to counter that better. Echo Force could easily splash a grenade in there, but the timing has to be right for sure, and I'm sure Madison's looking for that to be already used up.
And we see another 2 kills coming by Mustardman just in the cleanup there, so really pushing back Storybook villains even more. And Cobalt has this Primal Rage ready to go, depending on how he wants to go. He's trying to dive the Far Mercy and gets solo barraged by Mr. Mustardman. That is just mean, man. He has a family. Come on, dude. Sends him back to spawn. It's not fair for all us, for all our monkey mains out there. Cobalt is putting in the general chat, why do y'all hate me? I feel like you. I understand. So because of that, another stagger. It's actually a very smart kill for Mr. Mustardman, as that is a big stagger as he is back and trying to get revenge on Mr. Mustardman. Still has that primal rage ready to go. But this card is almost all the way through Streets phase.
Yeah, it has been tough here for Storybook villains to push out of these, covered areas into this open one with Mustardman just peppering them from above with, well, not even above now, standing on the box, shooting through the doorway. Very discouraging when you walk out and you're already, half health from a rocket. Ouch.
Yeah. Poor Kirby Bros. He's trying to make this Genji work. He does have that blade up ready to go again. But it's just so tough to play into this type of composition, especially with that Torb. He's just giving a lot of trouble, and especially Cobalt again trying to take a solo dive onto the back line of Spongebob Mac and Cheese, but there's really no one to dive unless you dive Madison on point, but then he can be easily peeled for with that bubble, with some of the with the healing from Alex Yoshi, with the Torb turret doing damage to Cobalt as well. I think he died to that Torb turret the last time. Dichopath getting an early kill on Ares though, so this might be the moment of opportunity for Storybook villains to turn the tide. Cobalt dies again. That is his 8th death in just this, and I think how much time has elapsed in this map? All I know is that there's only 3 minutes left to go, but that's a lot of deaths. So he's trying to make this thing work, but it's not really going for Ares. It does throw out those mines on what will be the finishing part of this map, trying to space out even more. Great kill from Cobalt onto Mr. Mushman, but Mr. Mushman still gets res successfully. Can't close out. And this fight is taking place off the point now. Another blade coming out by Kirby Bro, gets one in the ball, but gets another on Nico, even through the trans. And it seems like this might be able to be turned for Storybook Villains at the very last second, thanks to a heroic Kirby Bro blade. He was holding that, trying to make this Genji work for so long, finally comes up and catches them and able to find Pato.
Yeah, you know, big props to Kirby for getting those kills even through the trance. Not always easy to avoid all that healing and picking the right targets to avoid the healing.
Yeah, it is pretty hard to do, especially when you're playing Genji in this meta. Mr. Meshman trying to find kills there, does find Brutal, trying to look up 100% above you there, and as the card is still slowly but surely moving on, Alex Ushi does get that res onto Musterman again. So this is really hard for Storybook Villains to try and take, as the Primal Rage is coming up by Cobalt, but the kills are coming in for Spongebob Mac and Cheese. It's really not much you can do here, Cobalt, other than just try and stall point as long as possible. And because of that, another successful cap by Spongebob. Not as much time as we saw in Rialto with 1 minute and 39 seconds, but it is a pretty convincing completion of the map nonetheless.
Yeah, and you know, it didn't seem like Storybook Villains really took a strong stand against SpongeBob very often. So, you know, Beak, I'm curious to see what they're going to try to do for the attack instead, and if they can actually set a blazing pace.
Yeah, it's a rough life out there for those Winston mains. I don't want to call him out too much because I understand his pain, but I think if I'm reading the stat line correctly, it is 2 final blows and 8 deaths for Cobalt in that defense. Not exactly what you have in mind for your main tank. You're obviously supposed to be taking space, not giving it up. But I won't be too I won't be too tough on him. Yeah, so I am reading that right. That's exactly what we saw. So totally understand. As we see that now, Cobalt has learned his lesson, and now he is on ball for this attack. So he'd had his fun on Winston. I don't know if you would call that fun, but he is swapping over to that ball, and we will have a ball v ball action between Ares and Cobalt once more. And Mr. Musterman is trying to take a page out of Kirby Bro's book and actually go with that Genji pick. But Kirby Bro actually is finally trying to mean business and go back on the Echo that was so successful for him on that Rialto attack.
Yeah, well, and Brutal 1 is also playing Widowmaker. You've got those good sight lines here, so hopefully we can see some really nice head clicks going on. And, oh, Kirby Bro with the opening first blood, which honestly is not surprising.
This is deja vu all over again, honestly, for Rialto, because he gets an opening early pick on Ares last time as well as the other tank. But Cobalt goes in a little bit too deep, gets slept, gets deleted. And this is actually negating the entire push right there again. So Mr. Musterman getting a dash reset on the Kirby Bro is going to force Storybook Villains back just a bit. Brutal 1 not really finding the angles he needs yet, but all he needs is to find 1 or 2 kills to be able to open this up for Storybook Villains for their first point attack.
Totally. And you know, that Torb turret doesn't do tons of work, but it does apply pressure and a little bit of relief for SpongeBob Mac and Cheese, and just enough for them to continue to get the picks they need. And well, as once again Cobalt's coming in here, he gets body blocked and trapped and antied. Just everything thrown at him to get melted. So
I will give him the benefit of the doubt there, because you do sometimes get clipped on different pieces of the environment that you don't mean to get clipped on, so I feel him there. Nevertheless, Kirby Bro does find a finishing laser beam, focusing beam kill, and then Brutal 1 finds Alex Yoshi. This could be exactly what they need to do. This is go time for Storybook Villains. The copy comes out onto Wrecking Ball, trying to quickly build those mines for some area of denial into the cafe there. Nikolai tries to use that bomb to clear all those mines. Nevertheless, Brutal 1 finds another kill on the demeched Nikolai. So great accuracy from him. Kirby Bro finds another kill on the Jack. And all that's left is a turret on the high ground of that cafe. But that's not going to be contested point, as 4 minutes and 39 seconds for Storybook Villains for the rest of their attack here.
Yeah, they're setting a pretty good time so far, and their coordination looks way better than we saw last round as well. A lot of good pressure coming in from Kirby Bro, just still consistent from the last matches we were seeing.
Kirby Bro, again, so much more effective here on this Echo, obviously because she is very broken, so I'll give him that. And Cobalt finding another kill as well, but also finding time to nap. I think he's gotten slept 3 or 4 times already on this attack. He's a little bit low, so gonna go back and try and get some heals. Brutal One gets another kill to stagger back SpongeBob Mac and Cheese onto the little short Torbjorn that Jack is playing. But a lot of ultimates coming in for SpongeBob Mac and Cheese for this retake.
Totally, and you know, the Wisp has been basically in the kill feed every single time Kirby Bro has too, with that pocket on Kirby. So he's just, wow, putting in a ton of work with the help of the Wisp.
Yeah, it's that perma pocket on that Echo can be so frustrating to deal with sometimes, especially if you're on the other end of it. Jack gets deleted again by that focusing beam. Another victim to that, but here comes the blade, Nano Blade by Mustard Man, trying to find kills. Doesn't really get anyone as he tries to blade the copying Echo. It doesn't get anyone from that, and because of that, gets no value to that. But Kirby Bro copies him and gets his own blade of 2. So just a massive Genji diff on the Echo versus Genji, for at least that Kirby can take that to it. Jack, the fight isn't over yet as he's trying to use that Molten Core in and around the point. Doesn't get any kills with it, but is able to space them out just enough as the Wisp falls to that turret, and Dicopad is trying to bomb on point just for even more space, and takes Ares out. So it does find it, but the spawn for SpongeBob Mac and Cheese is just way more in their advantage as they're hounding the point here, as Cobalt's just trying to get back and trying to spawn camp, but it's really a little bit too little too late as he's trying to 1v1 the Widow. And because the rest of his team is there, Jack is going to win that fight.
Yeah, tell you're a little out of breath there. That was a long fight going in. But once again, SpongeBob Mac and Cheese holds the point here right at the end, right before they cap, and just the spawn advantage, they continue to trickle in and make that shift from stalling to aggressing and hold the point.
And we do see now that we are kind of looking for what can be done here. Ares is kind of just hanging out on this point. Nikolai does have the bomb ready to go. Ooh, massive 1v1 win by Brutal there. He has shown a lot of skill tonight on that Echo, or sorry, on the Widowmaker. I say Echo as Kirby Bro finds a kill onto Mustard Man as he is close to getting that blade. Can't die that soon to that win. That could be a win condition for your team to continue to hold. But nevertheless, Ares does find a kill to be able to negate them even more. The bomb doesn't find anyone, but now Kirby Bro gets slept in the backline. That doesn't actually confirm a kill until the follow-up by Mr. Mustardman and Nikolai actually gets them on top of that saloon. And again, another fight win by SpongeBob Mac and Cheese. And there's only a minute and a half left, Waffle, for Storybook Villain to try and find any success to get this second Streets phase as well as the rest of this map.
Yeah, you know, the Wisp went down first in that last fight, and, well, Kirby Bro sure was hurting without his pocket as he was quick to follow on that front. You know, 1 minute left. Cobalt has to have some good zoning come through with these mines, or Brutal One needs to pop off.
And a really big thing we want to be looking out for is Mustardman having that blade ready to go with that nano as well, but Echo Force doesn't have the trans ready to go yet, so he decides to pop this right here, right now. There's no counter for it, as we see. He takes out Echo, doesn't have the trans yet, and because of that, he dies. Another kill on the Brutal One, and just like that, another fight win for SpongeBob Mac and Cheese. But on the other hand, we do have Storybook Villains have a couple of ultimates on their own to try and take this away from SpongeBob.
Yeah, well, we have 30 seconds left here, so definitely approaching last fight territory. The mines and trance online for SpongeBob, so they definitely have some tools here to continue to zone and mitigate any push from Storybook Villains.
It is coming down to the last fight here. A lot of execution and clutchiness has to happen here as we see the Valkyrie come out by Wisp, and the copy comes out. Kirby Bro copies the Genji again, needs to have another game-changing copy blade trying to get the kills, but so far Dicopad and Brutal One are the ones that are lighting up the kill feed. Finally that blade comes through. He's not really finding many targets, and finally he's trying to prey on Madison, and that does happen, but nevertheless the fight is still taking place on this point. Dicopad trying to clear out the point with that bomb. Kirby Bro finds another kill onto the demech version of Nikolai, and finally they have seemed to have broken through, but this is still overtime. and SpongeBob has time to recontest this.
Totally. They have a close enough spawn where they could come out and touch this point and put up one last fight here before Storybook Villains touches this second point.
And they are able to find the touch. Nikolai does find that contest with the damage with the boosters here, but Kirby finally finds Mustard Man with another focusing build that has to be like the 4th or 5th here. Nikolai gets a kill with that bomb. And finding unsuspecting Wisp, I don't think he was gonna get caught out with that, but another map win for SpongeBob Mac and Cheese. And I'm smelling upset here, Waffles.
Whew. You know what? I am thrilled to see the underdogs come through. Here it is, Mr. Mustard Man. Let's just take a look at this nice play that he probably did. It's going to be a blade. Oh, it's the ending blade.
Yes, this is that blade where the Echo did not have that Transcendence ready to go. And hopefully SpongeBob was able to identify, be able to track that and be able to know that Transcendence wasn't ready to go yet, and the fact having that win condition, having that window of opportunity, was exactly all they needed to be able to waste even more time on the attack of Storybook Villains.
Totally.
So this has been really interesting to watch. I don't know what kind of dynamics is going on in between these teams, because SpongeBob Mac and Cheese is running a very anti-dive comp, whereas Storybook Villains is trying to play Genji and Monkey, and I know that they might be a little bit more playable after this experimental patch is going to be coming out in hopefully a week or two. Honestly, I hope it's sooner more rather than later. But for the meantime, Monkey is a very fine line to be walking right now, and Cobalt was having some trouble with that in the beginning, which allowed SpongeBob Mac and Cheese to be able to finish the map in the beginning.
Yeah, and SpongeBob Mac and Cheese, their Zenyatta at the end, Madison, popped their ult just a smidge early, seeping into Echo's dupe and that blade as well. But, the majority of that blade was nullified just long enough for them to regroup and come back. I think SpongeBob Mac and Cheese recognized that, Cobalt and Kirby were two huge threats coming in from Storybook Villains. And I don't think shutting down either of those players is a realistic expectation, but you can always contain them. And that's something that is a team effort and has to, you guys have to peel a little bit more for each other on that front. But I think they recognized it and definitely was containing them better. Obviously Kirby was still just shredding people with that focus beam in pocket, but I think that they were mitigated a little bit more than the last couple rounds.
Yeah, and the fact that, Kirby Bro still had so much value. You saw the 74% kill participation card that he got in a losing effort there. It helps with the Mercy Pocket, of course, but you're just doing so much damage. You're like basically an AC 130 in the skies when you're playing Echo with that Mercy Pocket. But I think a little bit of a greediness to that, trying to get as much value out of the Genji as possible. And to his credit, he absolutely was playing Genji to a high level, even taking it above Mustard Man, trying to copy him mid blade and getting more value out of the blade that he used in that Echo duplicate. But just from an overall macro perspective, just so much harder to run. And nevertheless, we are going into Volsky Industries is going to be our assault map here. And we do have a pause. So we're going to quickly come back here and talk a little bit more about Volsky. And I actually do think this is going to be playing a lot more into the favor of Storybook Villains, because Brutal One has been very effective on this Widowmaker, as we're going to see him pop out on this defense. And with all the high ground control around this point A, there's a lot of different angles that the SpongeBob Mac and Cheese has to be weary of getting in the line of Brutal One, because he can pop some heads if you're not careful.
Yeah, absolutely. And, he was putting pressure on those long Hollywood sightlines as well. But we'll have to see how SpongeBob Mac and Cheese does with a lot less natural cover to work with and work behind, to avoid some of those sightlines.
It will be interesting to see for sure, as we see Cobalt is on the ball. Kirby Bro is starting his defense on the Echo. So they, I think, finally are really intent on doing a full hold here. And the same composition that they have been running for on the side of SpongeBob Mac and Cheese is pretty much constant, with the sole exception of Jack going back to the Tracer. Don't think Attack Toward was going to be really the answer here. Nevertheless, we are seeing a pretty interesting rotation by the attacking team, by SpongeBob Mac and Cheese onto this high ground. A little bit of a flank action by Mustard Man, as he's already getting the wisp load, really unsuspecting. Kirby Bro finds the kill on Mustard Man in turn. Brutal One has that long sightline that we were talking about, and because of that, already feasting on Alex Yoshi. And the kills have come in for Storybook Villains already, just kind of decimating them, even with that unforeseen angle that SpongeBob Mac and Cheese took from all the way around. It wasn't enough because of the mechanical ability by Brutal One and Kirby Bro.
And, you know, Storybook Villain has the mobility from Echo and their tanks, but the Widowmaker has plenty of sightline to, you know, rotate a little bit and be able to shoot down those pathways. So good attempt on that type of rotation, but not quite as effective as they were hoping.
And we see that Brutal still has that long sideline, but they're taking this fight in a lot different of an area than the first one. So we see it's almost under the bridge on the right-hand side near the Point B walkway. But Kirby Bro does find 2 kills, one on the Zen, one on the Farah. Nikolai does getting that boom, but now, I mean, Kirby Bro still just has so much effectiveness here as he's still just harassing Nikolai on that Diva, and then finally copies him to try and finish off that kill. And then now this could be enough to be able to try and get that bomb. It actually gets pulse bombed out of his duplicate mech. So won't even able to leverage that pulse bomb, or sorry, leverage that Diva bomb, and because of that, this has been a back and forth fight, but the mines have come out by Ares on the point to even further deny this. So this is a little bit precarious for Storybook Villains to try and touch this point, but it seems like they've already won the fight off of the point. So all the mines, not a problem.
Yeah, I mean, if there's no one there to cap the point, there's no reason to contest in the mines, and that's exactly what happened as they just faded away. Jack was putting in a lot of really good work, does get mowed down finally as he was straggling behind, but I'm a fan of that commit on the pulse bomb. Kirby Bro is a force to be reckoned with, and I appreciate that he's respecting that front.
Very, very true. Got to respect the people that have been popping off as of late. So Brutal One has swapped over to the McCree, so I guess he decided that he was done popping off on Widow. But nevertheless, that stun on the ball is going to be devastating, as well as a little bit beefier of that McCree, as we are kind of getting a little bit of a reset. I think a little bit just trying to figure each other out. Nikolai and Jack do get kills here, so with the trade has come in. Nikolai is throwing that bomb into the point, but there's no one really around for it. But now Jack is going to point to try and put pressure on Storybook Villains to try and take that contest, but it doesn't really matter because they are able to contest it with Echo Force's Trans. Ares finds Whiff out on that, but so does Cobalt. Cobalt finds the other Zen. Both Zens go down for these teams, and now all they really do is Decapath can try and touch this point, but both tanks are so low for Storybook Villains. Decapath throwing the bomb on that, and finally actually gets Nikolai's mech, thinking his boosters were on cooldown there. Nevertheless, this does seem pretty precarious for what I'm going to say now, SpongeBob, because Brutal One and Kirby have been able to take this back with a bunch of these different picks, and it doesn't really matter because they're the ones cleaning up in the kill feed.
Yeah, and we are, like the clock says, 30 seconds remaining here. Kirby Bro and Cobalt both have their ultimates coming up online with Mercy to follow soon, but SpongeBob Mac and Cheese has a few ultimates of their own they can throw in response. So hopefully they can push fast enough to contest the point here.
They definitely will be able to touch, especially with Ares kind of doing a spin to win there. Jack needs to get a lot of value out of this pulse bomb, and Mr. Mustard has to get some value out of his barrage, because if he doesn't, then he's automatically sent to the spawn door. And already gets a kill on Kirby, which is massive, without using the barrage, and Kirby is their carry so far in this map. Trying to get the res on that, but that is just not going to work. Decides to use the barrage as both Mercies go out, trying to res and bring back one of their characters. Very Valorant type of respect there, but nevertheless, the mines get put on by Ares on point, and both tanks are just kind of shooting each other from distance very low. And the duplicate comes out from Kirby, finally comes back from that early kill, and is able to find the kills, and actually Cobalt gets the kill on the Ares. And this could be a full hold on the side of Storybook Villains.
Wow, yeah. You know, I mean, Kirby was still a force to be reckoned with. We've been saying it consistently. But, you know, I did notice that Madison just got caught a little bit too far away from the rest of the team. They were getting really hard pressured by the Hammond and didn't have anyone to peel for them fast enough. And as they were playing Zenyatta, that's quite a squishy character and a vulnerable character if you're on your own. And no right click is typically going to mow down a Hammond fast enough for you to live.
definitely will not. So this is what I was talking about. I'm thinking the more in line with expectations, I think that not only the Storybook villains have, but some of the other people around our Outlet community were speculating about what Storybook villains can bring to this tournament. I mean, I think when they play the right comp in the right way off the bat, then they can do what they just did, which was get a full point A hold. Now they did give up 66.9%, but still they did not give up any points, so to speak, on this 2CP map, which is I think was what I was expecting coming into this match.
Totally. If Storybook Villains gets a really solid clear out and then can set up long enough to prevent SpongeBob Mac and Cheese from even touching again, this could potentially be a very quick map.
So before we talk about it being a quick map, SpongeBob Mac and Cheese has some cheese on the platter to serve two Storybook Villains here as they are going again with that Bastion comp with the double shield variant with that sim. They're going to try and TP both sides of this, very cheeky, because the moment that Storybook Villains tries to dive them on this high ground, all they have to do is just walk over to the teleporter and go to the other side, and it's going to be hard to try and space themselves out from the dive that'll be coming in from Storybook Villains. So they do recognize the cheese that has been served up for them. So Storybook Villains is going to try and take a little bit more of a pincer play here. Brutal wanting to try and take the angle away from the Symmetra on that far right side, as well as the Diva and that pocket in the Wisp. So either less, they're trying to get rid of the teleport as much as possible, but Cobalt actually gets Ares caught out in that bridge area behind the point. Really odd positioning there. And just like that, everything has been unlocked for Storybook Villains, and that should be it. I mean, unless Ares is going to swap over to that ball for that last minute contest here. But that was a very, let's say, glass cannon type of composition. And just like that, it is now a 2-2 series going into a map 5.
Yeah, very much a glass cannon. What a beautiful analogy for that team comp that we just saw right there. Cobalt was on fire during that last round especially, and here he is duking it out and winning the 1v1 duel against the other tank as well. Comes through, bowls everyone off the high ground. Boom. There he goes, and well, there's Kirby also there to follow up more on that huge displacement behind the shields. With Storybook Villains the only players with cards up, really goes to show you, they've kicked it in gear that game and that round.
Definitely was something a little bit more that they wanted to try, and as much damage as the SpongeBob Mac and Cheese Bastion comp is. Not very mobile. Even with that sim teleporter, you're not going to have much. And once you delete that sim teleporter, you're on a cooldown, and that makes you very, very vulnerable. And SpongeBob Mac and Cheese, for as best as they tried, not going to be able to get it done. And now we are going to another control point to decide this series, which I think a lot of people, again, were convinced that this was going to be a 3-0. I mean, we had this team, Storybook Villains, at the top of everyone's power rankings because of just what we've heard, what the scrims were telling us. I mean, at this point, scrim bucks mean nothing.
Yeah, and especially when, maybe they had some fresh coaching or some fresh ideas come through and really give them a little revamp, so to say. But I'm glad that this is an exciting match. 3-0, that's a snooze fest for everyone. Instead, we got a nice competition between these two teams. And, well, Cobalt has been just doing great on that Hammond, just in general. I am really enjoying watching them play Hammond and zone people, displace them properly, but still being able to pull back and regroup when needed.
It'll be interesting as we are going to what will be Nepal. Well, hopefully, I will actually definitely be the final map, the tiebreaker on this series in this match. So Nepal is very interesting because you can play, and Sanctum is always one of the most unique map geographies in all of Overwatch. But then you also have the Nepal Village and Nepal, Nepal Shrine as well. That'll lend itself to a couple different variety of compositions. So I'm not exactly sure where SpongeBob Mac and Cheese's head's at now that their favorite Bastion comp, which got them so much success, really just a free win on Rialto, is going to lend them. It just gave them, which is exactly not, didn't have as much success on Full Sky. Let's just say that. How are they going to approach Nepal? I think they're going to try and play that same comp they've been running pretty much this entire time, with Musterman on the Pharah, with Ares on the ball, Jack on some sort of a flex DPS, or just trying to rotation between a Tracer. We saw Torb come out. So anyone's my best guess, honestly, as to what SpongeBob Mac and Cheese is going to do.
I really hope SpongeBob Mac and Cheese learned their lesson from Lijiang Tower and Cobalt Hammond with their multiple boops over and over. Sanctum is a potential boop map, and well, Cobalt's been on his game on that front. So I at least want to see SpongeBob Mac and Cheese ready for that type of gameplay and style.
It should be very interesting, as it all comes down to Nepal, the small chilly corridors of Nepal here, as we are heading to Sanctum first. As everyone's favorite map, I want to see how many boops that each of these respective teams get. Alex Yoshi is already hovering over that Lucio, and just as I say that, going over to Mercy. So you're no fun, Alex. But I know that every main support wants to play Lucio on Nepal Sanctum to try and get as many boops as possible. But we're seeing a very curious comp come out from SpongeBob Mac and Cheese. They're going back to the comp that won them Hollywood, that Torb and that Pharah. So Nikolai is actually going to go over to the Hog here, trying to get some of those hook kills into the pit as well. Whereas we see Kirby Barrel going back to that Echo, and as well Wisp staying on that Perma Pocket Mercy. So I think they're not playing around, and I think Jack and the rest of the SpongeBob gang is going to try and recreate the magic that got them some of these map wins in the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And Torb turret is taken down already, but nothing too much coming out of the fights yet. Just some poke damage, baiting out those abilities.
And just as we say that, I mean, Dykopath got taken out of the mech really early, and then Cobalt goes down, gets caught out pretty low. And just like that, SpongeBob Mac and Cheese has an early lead on the percentage. And then all they have to do is kind of catch all the stragglers in the spawn area near this mega. As Madison finds a pick on the Kirby Burrow alone, and then Cobalt dies again, getting caught out and has to go back to spawn. So already we're seeing some big staggers here by Storybook villains. They have to reset themselves here.
Yeah, absolutely. And right now, SpongeBob Mac and Cheese are in a good position to prevent Storybook villains from even re-entering the point.
And we see Wisp is coming up close. Actually, both supports for Storybook villains are close to coming online, those ultimates. So we'll see here, but so is likewise for SpongeBob Mac and Cheese. So Nikolai actually already has that whole hog ready to go. So the moment someone tries to contest this point, they're going to get whole hogged off into this pit. So it's going to be very precarious for Storybook villains to try and go. But already we see the pressure getting put on by Storybook villains to try and force out Madison's trans. And because of that, they're just going to back up a little bit. Dykopath takes way too much damage from a couple different angles. And because of that, gets taken out of the back and then gets removed. But just so much damage from the main path, from as well as this room here in the mega, which again is another fight reset, another fight win for SpongeBob, and a reset for Storybook villains.
And I gotta say, it feels like every time I'm looking at Storybook villains and they die, there's a Discord orb on them. So Madison doing a good job at finding those targets who are taking damage and, well, aiding the mow down effect.
And we see not only is there 80%, 85% coming up here for the tick percentage for SpongeBob Mac and Cheese, but look at the ultimates they have in their bank. They have plenty to work with, and Nikolai gets canceled out of his whole hog, and nevertheless is actually going to get killed no matter what as they try and push into this. Trans comes out via the Echo Force here, and Rez comes in for Mr. Musterman. And of course, Torb dies on point trying to use that Molten Core. And no matter what, though, that Torbolt still is existing, making life difficult. Echo Force is just one on point, trying to sustain as long as possible. The kills are coming in for Storybook villains here, trying to hide in the cubby. Gets a boop onto Wisp, but of course, Mercy can fly, so there is no boop potential there. Brutal One gets 2 kills in this closing fight as the point finally turns for Storybook villains. But now at 99%, just as SpongeBob had to do in the first control point, they have to play this point perfectly to be able to take Sanctum.
Yeah, and what a nice change of pace here coming out from SpongeBob, taking the first control of the point here. We'll have to see. Oh, what a nice stun! Trying to get them, does manage to escape after that. But I would like to see SpongeBob, retake this point and really utilize that trance at the right time to, counter as needed.
And we see just a couple different angles here being taken. Musterman and Alex Yoshi trying to take this left-hand side, but Brutal One surprises them with that flashbang. Didn't realize they were there, and Alex Yoshi, of course, tries to go for the mural for res. Not exactly going to be working out, and that is going to push back Spongebob a little bit here, as we see Nikolai actually using his whole hog in this right-hand side. Doesn't get any kills with it, but nevertheless, this is a little bit interesting, as we see both teams are kind of angles here. But nevertheless, this is still ticking up for Storybook Villains.
Absolutely, and Ares and Madison now both have their ultimates online. Jack is down, so maybe a little bit of stall for Spongebob as they are waiting to reset. Heinen gets popped by Brutal One, still zoning, doesn't find much there, but zoning ult to zoning ult.
Yeah, it does push everyone out to that far left side of this map. Mines for both teams get put out, does fall victim, Cobalt does, to Ares' mines, and now this is last fight territory for SpongeBob Mac and Cheese. They've kind of been sauntering around the point, finding what fight they want to take first. Nikolai finds the kill, kind of flanking behind into the spawn of the Storybook Villains, but the Wisp actually is able to res Brutal One up. He's going to be necessary to actually get this, and with all the kills coming out, Kirby finally flexes over to that Tracer, gets Alex Yoshi as well, and this is going to be Storybook Villains coming all the way from 0 to 99 and getting their first point of Nepal. SpongeBob Mac and Cheese kind of resting on their laurels a bit here, and it costs them this first map here in Nepal.
Totally. I mean, it's Overwatch. The game and the point can flip in the matter of just a blink of an eye and one little moment of being too relaxed and thinking that, oh, you're safe, or, you know, point's going to get capped, no big deal. Really nice job coming in from Storybook Villains to clutch it out and continue to prevent SpongeBob from being able to recontest successfully, just dragging out those fights around the perimeter and small trickling fights happening.
Very interesting indeed, and I think there's some flanking going on by SpongeBob Mac and Cheese trying to find maximum value and just didn't get it. Musterman's still on that Pharah. Till the end of this match, it seems to be, as we see, Ares is actually going to swap over to this Rhine once the brawl on this point, but they want to take this high ground first. And Brutal One does take Mr. Musterman out early. That is what that hit scan is designed to do, as well as Jack. So it gets that early 2K, but Mr. Musterman is rezzed up and ready to go. And then takes out Echo Force in that choke, so it's very hard for him to push out forward when all that splash damage is coming out. And now, doesn't matter because Kirby Bro is actually getting another kill on that other aerial character in Mustard Man. And just like that, Storybook Villains gets another fight win. It should take the early point percentage for Nepal Village.
Yeah, Brutal One just, I mean, carried that opening fight, in my opinion. Getting those kills onto the Doomfist and the Pharah. I'd be interesting. I would think that SpongeBob Mac and Cheese might switch off of that, but looks like they're going to stick with it and keep trying to press the attack here with this nice Reinhardt brawl comp.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think this makes life hard on Ares, and the fact that it's hard to... Oh, just gets a little bit out in front of Ares' shield there, does Jack, and goes down to the focusing beam. And another focusing beam almost goes down for Brutal One, but actually is able to escape that. But if you're a Reinhardt in this kind of composition, as we see more kills coming out from Storybook, and this is just literally cleanup again, you know, Ares has to try and play this on point as well as the rest of this comp, or else he's going to have a tough time and get really no value out of this Reinhardt.
Yeah, and you know, Kirby is peppering him from above regularly as well, forcing him to turn that shield to protect himself from the focus beam. And when you have to protect yourself from the focus beam, there's usually a lot of other damage that can come from a different angle, or you're not blocking your team enough so they can continue to heal you. Quite a Sophie's choice there, if you ask me.
Yeah, not exactly where they want. They finally do get the message here, does SpongeBob Mac and Cheese, by rotating right to point and forcing Storybook Villains to try and take this fight on point, but Kirby Bro is ready to be able to copy. Massive slam by Kirby Bro on that copy. He's spamming, he's throwing these DPI up to 16 million in this case because he knows he just had a fatty shatty, and that's a fight winner and ender right then and there. Kirby Bro doesn't even need the last 15 or last 10 seconds of that duplicate because all of that value got realized in that first 5 seconds.
Yeah, huge value in the first 5 seconds, but 83% and counting in favor of Storybook Villains. So SpongeBob Mac and Cheese definitely need to do solid here on this next push. Beautifully grouped up as they're all, you know, rotating onto the point here.
And we do have a big slam coming up by Ares. Does get both tanks down, but that is countered by Echo Force's Trans. And while that's happening, the better of the Echoes is Kirby Bro in that duel as of that finishing grade. But the grab does come out, gets 2 kills with does Nikolai in that grab. And in last-ditch attempts, Cobalt is trying to mine that point, determined to get SpongeBob Mac and Cheese to negate any of that, but then gets slept and has to roll away, really, before he goes and tries to prevent himself from dying. And now this is the point for SpongeBob Mac and Cheese. They have about 30% and need a lot more to get.
Yeah, not our typical 99% clutch flip coming from SpongeBob, but it's nice to see they gave themselves a little more buffer than they normally do. And finally went straight onto the point and just took the fight as a group and, are brawling it out like their comp is supposed to be doing.
Now the shoe's on the other foot here for Storybook Villains, rather, because now that the presence of SpongeBob Mac and Cheese is on this point, they're going to have to spam out the entirety of this composition before they really can take the fight and take this control point to win the map and the match, because of the presence that Ares has, as he almost has that Shatter online again, and both support ultimates are up for SpongeBob Mac and Cheese, so they're in actually a great position here. But Kirby Bro ready to has that duplicate. Let's see if he can recreate the magic of copying that Ryan once again.
Yeah, I mean, don't put it past Kirby to be able to do that. Or, I mean, there it is. Copy of the Rhine. Oh, and a block of the Shatter. Nice vision there by Kirby. Duke does get shut down quickly, but not before blocking a huge Shatter. And, although SpongeBob Mac and Cheese still has control of the point, kills are coming in favor of Storybook Villains.
This is massive as Brutal One gets a 4K, gets a 5K on this last-ditch turn here, and that might be it, folks. That might be is able to touch with that duplicate copy is Jack, but it might be too little too late. Mr. Musterman in desperation trying to touch on that Tracer, as well as Ares on the ball. Already uses his shields, and now he's just trying to roll around for the time being. Lucio trying to contest just as much, but that bomb is going to take him out as well. And between the mines, the bomb, all the different cleanup from Storybook Villains, this match, this fight is over, and Storybook Villains had a little bit of a blip here in this match, but nevertheless, they are taking the first match of the regular season, and they will go up 1-0.
Wow. And, I mean, Kirby Bro has played the game. Probably not a huge surprise here. Brutal says, report Cobalt for trolling. Oh, look, the 5-second dupe.
Yeah, who needs a main tank when you can just have your DPS copy the other main tank and get a fat slam like that as well? So we get over 30% really of that damage for Kirby Bro in that last map. Brutal One, though, was, I think, one of the other big keys of the game and keys of success for Storybook, because he was really effective on that McCree, especially towards the end. That actually is what won them the match. I mean, even with the mind games going on between the two Rhines and the copied Rhine and the real Rhine on the side of SpongeBob Mac and Cheese, that got rid of the shield for I think it was Ares who was playing that Reinhardt, and because of that, that's when Brutal used that high noon, caught 2 people out, got another 2 picks with that Mercy pocket, and it was kind of all she wrote after that. And Storybook Villains, it was a lot closer than I think a lot of people suspected, but nevertheless, this was a very interesting match nonetheless.
Yeah, absolutely. And, SpongeBob Mac and Cheese did a great job. Almost created the upset that, I was hoping for. But, wow, Storybook Villains, just their DPS alone were insane. And unsung hero-wise, I would have to say is going to be the Wisp with those constant pockets, enabling them to get that extra damage. And, I don't need to hit every headshot. I got the pocket. Do a couple bodies, no big deal.
Yeah, really interesting to see. I mean, again, I think Storybook Villains was just trying to see what they can get away with really in this match in terms of composition, in terms of how they play those heroes in those compositions. Because when they played the comps and when they played them right, those are pretty clean wins. I mean, they were able to go take the SpongeBob Mac and Cheese 0 to 100 on that Nepal Sanctum. They were pretty dominant on the Nepal Village. They got the full hold on Volskaya. So I think when they want to play, they can play, and they just had to wake themselves up when they wanted to get this match win. They just wanted to play a little bit longer in this match and be on stream for a little bit longer too.
I mean, who doesn't want to get be on stream and be casted by us? It was fantastic.
Yes.
But it'll be interesting to see what they do later in the season as well. If they take a little bit more lackadaisical approach for some of their more upcoming matches, or maybe took a lesson learned here from SpongeBob and not get too confident in your standing.
Absolutely. So I believe we will get an interview here, Silent, if that's correct. Just to make sure. We will, before we get to the interview, we will be going to a quick break. Thank you for staying with us throughout this entirety of the long, now 5 maps that we've played between these two teams, but we want to hear from some of the players, or at least one of the players from one of these teams right after this break.
And folks, I'm actually going to have to hop off and go to the other Owlet site, casting those games. So thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you all around.
And welcome back, everyone. Thank you for staying with us if you have for this long. Really big win here for Storybook Villains, 3-2 against SpongeBob Mac and Cheese. Very surprising in the first regular season matchup of Owlet 3.9. And here with me, I have Kirby Bro 64, who is the flex DPS for Storybook Villains. How you doing, Kirby?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
It's good to have you here. And so first of all, how do you feel about the match you just played against SpongeBob Mac and Cheese? So I don't know if you have any history with the Owlet tournament or what you were expecting to come into this match. But was it everything you expected, or was it more competitive than what you thought would happen?
So this is my first time playing in the Owlet tournament, and as for expectations, I was expecting a bit more of a um how can I say this? It was a bit more competitive than I expected,
Mhm.
partly due to us just uh trolling a little bit, and but then once we got into the groove, it was quite a blast. I had a lot of fun that match. It was really
I
fun.
bet you did. So I need to pick your brain about a couple things. First of all, you played really well in the Echo. You guys
Mhm.
just absolutely dominated. Also, Echo is just super strong as a character right now.
Mhm.
I saw you trying to force the Genji there, and you actually had a couple of great blades, even with the copy Echo, bettering Mr. Musterman on that blade on Hollywood. But one thing I don't want to talk to you guys about is on Rialto, one of the maps you guys lost.
Oh yes.
That opening composition between the Bastion and the BAP on the far right side.
Ooh, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then the rest of you guys trying to play almost like a goats composition, trying to ambush everyone on spawn. A, who came up with that? And B,
Um,
why that comp, honestly?
so we were just every we decided that every payload map we just wanted to try and spawn camp at least once, and I believe the person who came up with that composition was either um it was either Brutal, Echo, or Cobalt. I don't exactly remember who came up with it, but um I just personally picked a Doom because I like going in as Doom. It's
Right.
just one of my favorite picks,
Mhm.
and so I just decided to play with those dudes on the left side, and I don't know. uh,
So
talking about the
I'll ask this
starting comp,
question: were you guys
yeah.
surprised when they had their own Bastion at the beginning?
Yes, I that was quite surprising.
Okay.
I wasn't expecting that, and also I wasn't expecting to get hooked right out of the right out of the gate and getting rolled instantly. Um, and then that was a bit funny though, from my
It was definitely
perspective.
it was funny to us too as casters. We're like, oh my god, how is Stone SpongeBob she's going to be able to handle this weird type of Bastion cop and ambush? And all of a sudden, they pop
They
out
come
their
out with
own
their own.
Bastion. And if you actually look at their team card, they love playing Bastion. So you kind of
Mm,
almost played right into their hands because they're like, oh, we get to play Bastion, great. So yeah, very curious, but obviously it worked out for you guys in the end.
mhm.
So another question here we have is that the Nest, so that the kind of weekly pregame or pre-weekly show that we have at Outlet, all predicted this match to be a 3-0 for you in favor of you guys, favor of Storybook Villains.
Yeah.
I predicted 3-1, but in your opinion, were you surprised that the series was this close?
Um, a bit because partly again like we were not taking it too seriously at the very beginning,
Yeah,
and a lot of us were like really
right.
hard trolling. Um, but once we actually started taking it a bit seriously, um, it was not too much of a struggle in the end.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's kind of what we were figuring when we talked about you guys on the Nest show, is that you guys are a pretty high skilled comp in terms of relative to everyone else, and then just a matter of what's the level of seriousness you guys bring to your game, what's the comps you guys are going to bring because of that will be really interesting. So I mean, I don't know how much you know about the other teams that you're going to be going up against in Owlet. So if you do, is there any other particular player or team that you're looking forward to playing throughout the rest of this regular season and even in the playoffs?
I am looking forward to playing against Blues Clues again.
I-
As
Is
we've
there
scrimmed them
history there?
before.
Do you want to kind of give some background to that?
So we did scrim once before the Outlet tournament. It was quite a fun scrim, honestly. We were doing a bit of the trolling thing, and it was a fun scrim just because of that, and it was fun playing against them.
Very interesting. So I think the last question here before I let you go is looking forward into the rest of this, the rest of the tournament here. Do you guys feel like you guys are going to be able to take it? I mean, we kind of put you guys at the top of the power rankings. All three of us did on the Nest. Do you think that's warranted? And will there be any surprises on the way that we should know about?
Personally, I think it's warranted. We got a pretty solid stack of team players here. We all know each other, and we enjoy playing with each other. And all I have to say is we beat people up, and we like doing it.
All right, confirmed facts. You heard it here first, guys. His own team. He agrees with his own team being put on the top of the power rankings. That is wild to hear. But thank you, Kirby, for coming on. Really appreciate it. Good luck in the rest of your games. Good luck. Good match today. For the rest of you guys here watching, thank you for sticking with us at this time. If you're not done with watching Overwatch tonight or watching Owlet tonight, we will have another match coming up on the main Outlet tournament Twitch, which is twitch.tv/Outlet tournament, between Cats with Hats and Everfrost. And Cat with Hats is actually, say it again. And yeah, with Waffles actually is going to be one of those casters. So if you'd like hearing Waffles, stick around, go to that channel. Cat